This is a video about changing the brake pads on an Alfa Romeo Brera in my case, or any Alfa Romeo that has these 4-pot aluminium Brembo calipers on, with the pins that go through the pads through into both sides of the caliper to lock it into place with this spring. When I try to do this, normally you just knock these pins out, and normally that's not a problem because you've got the pins going into a steel or cast iron caliper. This is an aluminium caliper, and what happens there's little spring collars on the pins on this side which corrode into the aluminium casing because of dissimilar metals, i.e. galvanic corrosion. The top pin knocked out straight away without too much trouble. The bottom one would not move. So I went on to YouTube, had a look, see if there's anything. I went to Alfa Workshop, alfarona.com, and there seems to be a fairly common problem. I went back to Alfa Workshop and I phoned them up, and I actually spoke to a guy in the workshop, and I said, is there any particular technique you should use to remove these pins without damaging things? He said no, the only way to do it is violence. We sometimes have to cut them and knock them out one piece at a time. I said, but no, any way you can. I said, well, what about mold grips twisting it? He said, well, any way you can to get them out because they corrode in. He says, you will need new pins. So I said, okay. So I went away, and my technique was to warm the calipers using a blowtorch in this area here and there where it was corroded in, and then apply it with some plus gas, which is a proper releasing fluid, not WD-40. WD-40 is not a releasing agent, it's better than nothing, it's a silicone fluid really. This is the proper thing to use, something this or something like this. I'm sure there's an American equivalent that you can use to penetrate in and try and get these things freed. I then left it, and then I put a bit more on, left it about half an hour, and then came back, and using a larger punch I started to hit it from both sides. I used this punch here, which is much bigger than the hole, but I wanted to make sure I got it square on because it started to flatten off the end of the rounded ends of the pins. I started to move it just a little bit by tapping it with a hammer and the punch from this end, then from that end, and then backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards for about 5 or 10 minutes until I could start to feel it move. Once I was able to move this bit almost flush with that, I was able to then put mold grips onto there and twist it backwards and forwards, just worry at it. And that's the way to do it. Little at a time. I wouldn't recommend slogging the hell out of it with a hammer because you might go and break something. You know, use a heavy hammer and use it lightly rather than a light hammer hard, to give you more control. Tapping it backwards and forwards, worry at it until you can break that seal and pop a bit more WD-40, plus gas on it, not WD-40. Eventually I managed to get it out. Now they recommend that you fit new pins. I've ordered new pins and springs for both sides. I've managed to reassemble it with the existing pins just in case I need to drive the car. That is surplus to requirement. I'll probably cut that off because there's only a wear detector connector on one side of the car, and it's not this side. The pads come equipped with wear detectors on both inners. Anyway, that was TRW pads bought from Alfa Workshop, by the way. So yeah, just to recap, what you're going to need is copper slip on the pins and in the holes on the pads, and a good clean up with wire brushes on the little wire brush on the tracks, and with a screwdriver on the tracks or with the pads slide in and out because they get corroded. Give it a general clean up round. Be careful of the rubbers on the caliper, on the pistons, there's 4 of them, and apply copper slip to all the areas where you don't want things to stick, on the pins, in the holes, on the backs of the pads, and on the area of the caliper where the pads slide. and that does the trick. In all other regards, it's just a normal brake pad job, which should be fairly straightforward. In this case, it was just the complication was the fact that the pins stick in, and that's probably why most people would be watching this video. So if you find it harder than I'm finding it, then I pity you, because this was not a picnic. But hopefully, if you worry at it and use some releasing fluid and a bit of heat, that should help it. Okay, good luck with your job.